Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. How you doing today? It's Jibril, all Sadat here again with Mark Hunter Brooks, and we're here to bring you another podcast. And today our podcast is about Fear is the Mind Killer. All you doom lovers out here will be familiar with the saying. I came across the saying years ago when I read the Dune novel, which I believe is the best science fiction novel ever written, regardless of whatever happened in the movies. But I've also watched the movie, that first movie that wasn't really that great. And I also watched the miniseries that was great on Sci-Fi. And I'm looking forward to the new couple of Dune movies that are coming out, as we say, inshallah, God willing, right? So we're going to get into this, and we're going to, talk a little bit about what is it about fear, and why is fear the mind killer? Mark, you have something to say before I jump into it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. When Jibril and I were talking about this offline, it reminded me of something that I was trying to do for a while. And I like to put nuts out for the squirrels, and just watching the animals coming around. And some of the people who come by, they say, yeah, you're the guy with the bird seed and the little feeder thing. I was okay. But it made me think. And I'll ask you a question. And this is just a way to kind of tee up the whole thing about fear is, if you had to get a squirrel to eat nuts out of your hand, how would you do that? And you can talk about saying, well, I'd put the nuts out, and then I'd make sure that they saw me putting it out, and then I would linger there a little bit longer. I would sit down maybe one time while the food was out, so they'd have to walk in front of me in order to get to it. And then eventually I would end up having it in my hand and throwing it out, and then holding it in my hand and letting them come to get it. But underlying all of that is the first thing you're trying to do is you're trying to help that animal conquer its fear. And you can't train somebody, you can't train this animal or train, or develop a technique or a tool or whatever if someone is too scared to try it. And think about how that applies itself in your life. What are some things that you're afraid of doing? And are you the type of person, and this goes back to the fight or flight syndrome, I guess, is, when you're put in a situation that you're uncomfortable in, do you tend to run away, or do you tend to stick in there and fight? And that may have some applicability here. I'll see what Jibril has to say about that. But it's important to have a technique in your toolbox for how you live your life to conquer your fear. Put yourself in difficult situations or strange situations, hopefully with a mentor or someone who's going to be there to support you, and try to work through it. And sometimes it's things you can do in an afternoon, a week, a month, but sometimes it's stuff that can last your whole life. But conquering your fear is one of the keys, and learning how to conquer your fears is one of the keys to help you learn more about yourself. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jibril.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give you the psychological view of it first. Why do human beings have fear, right? Well, psychologists believe that, fear is a response to a physical or emotional danger that we need, that we've had throughout evolution to keep us safe, to protect ourselves. So that's their version of why we have fear, right? That's their version that they believe why we have fear. I like to say, and I believe the reason why I was so stuck on the Dune saying fear is the mind killer, because I've been in fear a lot in my life, right? I've been in dangerous situations where I had to conquer my fear, to overcome my fear, right? To use my better judgment. One situation with fear is that when I was in airborne school, when you go to airborne school, you have 3 weeks. The first week is ground week, which is not that bad. All you're doing is running your guts out and doing exercise and calisthenics and stuff like that, getting fit, right? You have people constantly yelling at you every day and stuff like that. But after you went through basic and after you went through infantry school, you really know they're trying to break you, so it's not bothering you. Plus, your mentality has gotten stronger, so I just want to get through it. The second week is Tower Week, where the fear comes into it. They strap you up, tighten you up in all this harness, and then they take you up to this 36-foot tower, which that might not sound that high, but when you go up there, and you look out, you can go on YouTube and put in 36-foot tower airborne school. You can see what I mean. And you look out, and they hook you up, and you have to jump out. Now, you hooked up to these wires, so you're not going to fall to the ground. But that doesn't have anything to do with your fear, right? Because in your mind, you're thinking, well, what if this thing breaks? Or what if I slip out this harness? So your fear takes over you. And when fear takes over you, the rational part of you leaves. So what is fear? Fear is something irrational, right? You start thinking about all these other things, all these possibilities that can happen to you, but don't happen to you. So that's the first time when I got up to the 36-foot towers, I had to face my fear. And what the object of going through the 36-foot tower is preparing you to be able to jump out of a plane. Now, no one with any great sense would jump out of a perfectly good plane. It doesn't come naturally. It's not something human beings do. I don't know any human being who's going to say, you know what, let me go ahead and jump out of this airplane because this is just something I want to do and this will be fun. Now, you have the people that are the skydivers, and if they tell you every time they go up, I don't care, A license, B license, how many times they jump out, if they go up and tell you they don't have any fear every time they go out, they're lying to you. Any paratrooper who ever jumped out of a plane, a helicopter, who said he was never afraid, even if he was doing Halo, which is high altitude, low opening, is the military version of skydiving, they're lying to you. You have to have a certain amount of fear to have a certain amount of respect for what you're doing, so you won't do something foolish. So when I first went out of the 36-foot tower, there was a lot of guys who wouldn't go. A lot of guys got sent back, and they lost the opportunity to become airborne, to become a paratrooper, because they wouldn't go. They got up there, and like I said, even though they know they had the harness on, even though they knew they were hooked to wires, even though they knew, they had all the safety checks and everybody was watching out for them, they just wouldn't go. Their fear would paralyze them, literally paralyze them, so they couldn't go out the door. My first time up there, I went out the door, right? And I went out there because I rationally figured out, what's the worst thing that can happen? I can die. So what? Big deal, right? So I went out the door. So I passed the tower week, and then the last week that you come to before you get your airborne wings, you come jump week. And jump week, you got to do 3 daytime jumps and 1 nighttime jump. And out of the 3 daytime jumps, you got to jump 1 time out of a jet, which is really crazy because the other jumps are out of propeller planes. It's a C-130 Hercules. So the first time I'm up, everybody's sitting there. And like I said, to jump out of a plane, to put a chute on your back, they got to tighten everything up. So they put a straps between your groin and they tighten it real tight. So everything, not to get too explicit, comes up to your throat, right? You're there real tight and you got all that equipment on, and you can't hardly breathe. And you have this yellow cord that's called a static line that you got to hook to this thin line that's running in the airplane that's supposed to pull out your trailer chute so you can pull out your main chute. And then they always tell you, this is the fun part, if your chute don't open, you have that reserve chute to pull out. But you only have 4 seconds to do it. And you have to throw it out as you fall into earth to your death. Right? That makes sense. So, of course, that's going to get rid of your fear, right? No. you're still going to be afraid. So I go up for my first jump. I'm sitting there. I'm all tight. I got to use the bathroom. Can't use the bathroom, right? The plane is flying around and stuff like that. And you looking at everybody else, and everybody else trying to do the same thing you trying to do. Play like you're not afraid, but you're all about it. They're all afraid. Some people talk. Some people pray. Some people play like they sleep. Do anything so the other person won't see the fear in their face, right? So they give the calls out, stand up, hook up, shuffle through the door, boom, right? And you're supposed to hit the sides of the airplane, put one foot out and push yourself out and go into a tuck, and you go 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and you pray that your chute open. Because if you hit 4,000 and you don't feel a tug, you're in a lot of trouble, and you better start thinking real fast. Fear. So I jumped out. When I first jumped out, the harness was all tight. I jumped out 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, right? And then I heard a whoosh, and you get jerked all the way back up. And then you look up, because they teach you. You have to look up and make sure your canopy is open, right? You look up, and voila, you see this big old green thing look like a skirt, like you're looking under a woman's skirt, and you feel it tug you, and it slowly bring you down to earth. And all the fear you had leaves, because now you have this angelic feeling as you're floating down to earth, where you just hear a rush and you hear a calmness, and you're like, man, this must be what heaven's like. All up until you get to the last 100 feet, which is treetop, where you're not going down to the earth. The earth is coming up to meet you, and it's coming up real fast. And then fear comes into you again. And then you plop down, and hopefully you don't break anything, and you're there. So every time you start to strap on that parachute, you have fear. But through the training, you learn to overcome that fear. You learn to push through that fear. If fear is like the psychologist said, it's something that we have and we evolved to keep us from doing stupid stuff, to keep us to protect ourselves, then it's unnatural to learn how to push through that fear, because fear is the mind killer. Fear will always tell you, like I said, when you're up on that 36-foot tower, even though you all harnessed in and you connected to wires, fear keeps on telling you that you're not safe, even though logically and rationally, you are. So fear is the mind killer. Fear will stop you. Fear will freeze you. When you take that night jump, which is not a jump, and you're in a jet, the first thing they tell you is you can't jump out of a jet like you jump out of a prop, because number one, you hit them engines, right, and they'll kill you. It's a funny thing about it. Every time it comes about jumping out of something, the first thing they tell you is it'll kill you. So of course you got fear, but they train you to push through that fear. So you up there at night, and see in the day, and when you jump in the daytime and they open up the doors, and if you're close enough, you can look out and you can see the landscape and see where you have to go and stuff like that. At night, it's pitch black. It's pitch black in the plane. All they have is a little red light on, right? Sorry about that. All they have is a little red light on. And then they open the doors, and if you're close enough, you can't see anything. Even if it's moon bright, even if it's stars outside, you can't see anything. Matter of fact, you can't hardly see the guy in front of you. So the doors go open, stand in the door, hook up, shuffle to the door. So you shuffle into the door, because you can't really walk because you have all that equipment on. So you shuffle into the door, and instead, you just start seeing people disappear. You don't know where they're going. And that heightens your fear, because what is fear is the unknown. So we shuffle into the door, and everybody just disappearing. All my bad, Smitty disappearing, and Johnson disappearing, and everybody just disappearing. I'm like, man, I'm gonna disappear too, right? And you get up to the door, and you can hear the jet engines roaring, right? Big old plane. You hear the jet engines roaring, and okay, don't jump, because why you don't jump? Because it will kill you if you jump out of this jet plane. So you get there and you kind of ease out. And before you ease out, the wash of the jet engine just grab you and suck you out the plane. Right?
That was scary, just sitting there looking at you.
Yeah. And you're sitting there, doing this, and you can't even see the chute go up. You just hear the tug and you go up in the air. It's like, I don't know if you ever when you're riding down the highway when you were a kid and you put your arm out the window real fast and it jerks it back. That's how it is when you jump out of a jet. It jerks you real back, right? And I'm sorry about the right. It jerks you real back and your chute comes out and hopefully everything is all right and stuff like that. But you're floating down in the darkness. You cannot see the treetops. You cannot see the ground. So fear again. And you have to push through fear. Fear is a good thing to give you, to stop you from doing something foolish. You know, you don't want a kid to go up on the third floor and just jump out of a window because he wants to jump out of a window. You want them to have a little fear. So fear is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. Fear is a good thing. But fear is also the mind killer. Fear will also stop you from doing things that are necessary for doing. You know, when 9/11 happened and those police officers, God bless them, and those firemen, God bless them, firemen and women, went into the building, when they ran towards the building, they were afraid, but they pushed through their fear because they know they had a job to do. You know, when police officers hear somebody firing, or they're in a dangerous situation, they're afraid. They have women, they have wives and children or husbands or whatever want to go home to, but they push through the fear. When you're in the military and you're in a firefight and the adrenaline is pumping, and adrenaline helps you to overcome a lot of fear, but also you're still afraid when you have bullets whizzing past you and stuff like that. But you push through it because of training. Because you have to be trained to overcome your fear, because fear will paralyze you in your life. Fear will have you not able to go outside of your door. Fear will have you not able to try anything new, to start a new job, or do everything. Every time I start a new job, even though I was a chef, even though I was experienced, I was afraid. But I pushed through it. My fear was irrational, because I was trained and I had done the job before. But that's what fear is. Fear is irrational. If you let fear overcome you, if you let fear overcome your mind, it will stop you from doing a lot of things. And so when I read in Doom, when I read that saying that fear is the mind killer, I would face my fear, and I would let my fear pass through me. And when my fear passed through me, only I will remain. That is true. I don't know how a science fiction writer came up with that, but that is true. You will have, as a human being, as a rational human being, and fear being irrational, you have to let it pass through you. Because how do you become a full human being if you don't try to get rid of all things irrational? And that also includes the fear of death. And stay with me for 1 minute. If death is inevitable and we're all going to die, why do we fear it? It makes no sense. It's illogical. It's irrational. Death is nothing to fear, because death and life are one. You can't have life without death. And you can't have death without life. So why do we fear death? You should not fear death. You should not run towards it or run from it, because it's there. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about this podcast about fear is the mind killer. We need to get over that. We need to face our fears. Yes, fear is there doing evolution to say, hey, you got a stick. That's a saber-toothed tiger down there. Don't you go down there poking that saber-toothed tiger, because he's going to eat you, right? or don't mess with that woolly mammoth because he's going to come back and stomp you to death because he's so big. Yes, we grew, we evolved. And through our evolution, some people say fear is common sense, but it isn't. Most fears are irrational. Why we won't ask that woman on a date or that man on a date? Because we're afraid. For some irrational fear. Oh, they look too good. They want to mess with us. We this and we that. We have all kind of irrational reasons why we want to do something out of fear. If you think about most of the things that you were afraid of doing, you realize they were irrational. We were just making things up in our heads. That's why fear is the mind killer. Learn how to face your fear. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and one other thing, we just got finished talking about leaders. One of the things a good leader does or a good mentor does is help you push through your fear. Yeah. And I think that's important too, is find a good mentor, find someone and talk to them and say, hey, help me grow, put me in situations that I'm uncomfortable with, that be there to help advise me and coach me so that I can push through it and not be afraid. And Jibril, you had instructors in your airborne school that taught you, all these different things, and I think if you didn't have them, if they just put you up in a jet plane and said, hey, you're going out this door. Yeah. But there was actually a plan, this week of the first week of getting you ready, the second week of jumping off the tower, and the third week of going up in the planes, it was all planned out. But that allowed you to conquer your fear and to do something that if you had to do it on day one, jump at night from a jet, you wouldn't have done it. But on day 21 or whatever, the last week of jump school, you could. So I think it's one thing to thank leaders and thank mentors. And if you have a mentor or a leader in your life who's helping you grow and challenge yourself and give you opportunities to be put in, let's just say, situations that make you uncomfortable, be sure to thank that person. And also, too, if you have the opportunity to coach somebody who you want to see improve and grow, be their mentor, be their leader, and help them push through their fear as well, because that's how everybody helps each other. So, but this was great, and I learned a lot about airborne I didn't know. So
airborne school, Sergeant Airborne, black hats, It's
so and as you were sitting there thinking, I'm sitting there saying, well, what about the dogs that jump with some of these guys? They get strapped to the paratrooper and they have on goggles too. I said, what's going through their mind, or do you ever hear them yelping or hollering on the way down, or are they saying, go?
They're trained too. They're trained too.
Yeah, that's wild. And then what about this guy who jumped without a parachute? You didn't see that? There was a guy who jumped from like 4,000 feet, or I forget how high.
And he lived?
He jumped into a net that was like 200 feet above the ground.
Oh, okay then.
Okay. He had some guys flying or going down with him, and they broke off at the last 1,500 feet. But the last 1,500 feet, he was all by himself. And
that's what you call stupidity.
Well, and that's probably a good thing to mention too. You can be stupid in conquering your fears.
Yeah, that's you don't want a little kid to jump off the third floor building. You would want them to have some kind of common sense. So hopefully fear will come into that. But some people like daredevils. I used to love Evel Knievel. He was my guy. Broke every bone in his body. God bless him, but he still was my guy. But a lot of stuff he did was kind of stupid when he jumped over Grand Canyon and all this other stuff.
I love that one.
But I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. But God bless him though. But it's just, we have all kind of fears. Like, I hate going to the dentist. I don't fear going, but I hate going to the dentist. And sometimes I used to fear going, but it's an irrationality, because think about it. You're going to the dentist to fix what's ever wrong with your mouth, right? So I hate doing that. So the dentist is there to help you out. So why do you have a fear to go to someone who's helping you out to make you feel better, to help you out? I hate surgery. I have a fear because I had so many surgeries when I was in the Army. I have a fear of going under the knife. But if I have something wrong with me and I need to go under the knife to fix it, then it's an irrationality for me to fear to go under the knife. So, you have to put fear in this perspective. And, I look at my life now. I don't know anything that I fear. I don't think it's anything I fear now, because I've realized what this life is all about. Right? That I almost did it again. That this life. If everybody want to know what I'm doing, I found out by listening to these podcasts. I have a habit, a tick of always saying right, and I'm trying to break myself of that habit. And so that's what I'm trying to do. That's why every time I stop and say I almost did it again, trying to break myself of that habit of always saying right every time I'm saying. I don't know. I think I do it for emphasis more than anything else. It's like when I can't stand when somebody say, "You know what I mean? You know what I mean?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know what you mean."
Or yeah. There you go.
We all have ticks that we do unconsciously, and it's good to understand what yours is and try to correct it, because I think I don't know if I'm trying to convince myself or convince you by saying right, but it's something that's annoying to me. So I just want you to be aware of it and cognizant of it. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to break myself of that, that tick that I have all the time. It's like years ago when my mother was a good Southern Baptist, and they believed that when you use your left hand, that was the devil. And they used to do all kind of things to people, which was cruel, to make them not use their left hand. Not use the hand of the devil, because everybody want to be on the right hand of God, right? So
the ruler if you wrote with
your do all kind of stuff to you on your left hand to make sure your right hand becomes your dominant hand, which was wrong, because we now know that it has more to do with the way you think and the way your brain works than some theological hocus pocus of what people used to say and all that. So that's all it is. I'm just trying to deliver myself a tip, which has a lot to do with fear too.
That's good, really. Yeah.
I don't want to be stuck. My fears don't want to be stuck saying, right. I don't want to do that as I talk. But you want to. That's all I have to say is that understand that fear is an irrational emotion. Fear is the mind killer, and as a thinking, rational human being, you want to think out each one of your situations and do the best course of action that's possible for you. And that's the best way to do anything. And leave fear aside. Go ahead, Mark.
And find somebody to help you do it. If you're afraid to do something, find somebody who's an expert in it or who's experienced in it to help you. If you have a fear of heights, and you want to do rock climbing, find a rock climber who can teach you, or go to some of these indoor, climbing centers so that you can learn. But get experience, get a good mentor, get a good leader, someone you know and you trust to help you push through it. And sometimes we can do these things on ourselves, and some people are just good about putting themselves in strange situations or unusual situations, so that they can consciously grow. And sometimes people will book themselves for presentations or do these different activities that would cause them fear, but they do that to put themselves in a situation where they have to do it or be embarrassed. But that's another way to grow. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be a fool, but don't be afraid. We said some things offline that I'm not going to repeat, but you know what I mean. Do things and be deliberate, but don't get too far, out of your comfort zone.
Be a rational human being. That's what we said. We're not saying forget your fear and all this other stuff. We're saying be a rational human being. As Aristotle said, human beings are a rational animal. I hope people understand what rational means. Right?
And he's sitting here trying to kill a fly while we're talking. So this is fun. We had fun today. Yes. But it's 30 minutes. So thank you for your time. And hey, we had fun. Let's talk again. Take care.
Peace.